In this final video for the car modification kit, we'll address some of the issues that you'll run into with the textures on the opposite side of the car, and also we'll take a look at how we can go about fixing those problems. Okay, so here's where we left off, and before we go ahead and move on, let's take the UV layout that we created for this side of the car and move that UV layout onto the opposite side. Even though this opposite side was UV laid out in the original car modification kit, you may recall in an earlier video we had actually remapped this driver side. So what we can do to move the UV layout from this side over to this side is first of all select the side that's already been mapped, then shift select the opposite side, and now we can just go up to Polygon and let's go to Transfer, and let's take a look at what we're going to be doing by clicking on the options. And you'll notice by default this is turned on, UV sets, and that's what we want to transfer over. Okay, so with the UV sets turned on, let's transfer. Okay, and let's do the same for the door. First of all, select the one that you've already got mapped, then shift select the object that you want to move the UV layout onto, then go to Polygons, Transfer. Okay, and let's do the same with the ground effects. Okay, we'll transfer those. And then the front area, we'll go ahead and leave as it is because you can see that it's already one solid, that it's one complete object. So there's really no need to move the UVs on that. Okay, now if I go to my Hypershade and take a look at this sidecar node, this is the node that's holding all the decals for the side of the car. So if we select these areas that have had the UV transferred onto them and assign the material to the selection, let's take a look at what we're going to get when we render this. Okay, and you can see the main issue that we're having with this opposite side of the car is that all my text is a mirror image of what it was on the opposite side. And unfortunately, there's really not going to be just a one-click solution to fix this. So let's go ahead, and what we're going to have to do is make a new texture for this opposite side of the car. Okay, so real quickly, let's go back to Photoshop, and I've got open here the original Photoshop document that we used to build the textures for the original side of the car. So what we need to do to fix this is let's start off by selecting just this Vulkan layer, which is this one decal here. And what we can do is go up to Edit, go up to Transform, and let's flip this horizontally. Okay, and you can see what we wind up with is just a mirror image of that text. It still remains in the same place in this overall texture. Okay, and let's go ahead and do the same for this Blaupunkt layer. Let's go to Edit, Transform, and let's flip this horizontally. And everything else we're going to go ahead and keep the same. This tribal texture, we'll go ahead and leave it. One thing that we need to do, though, is make sure that we go ahead and change our alpha channel. Because if you look at our alpha channel, it's still got the original layout. So what we can do is just go ahead and throw this away, and then just make a new alpha channel. Okay, and we'll do this pretty much the same way. We'll start by control clicking on one layer, and you can see that it's selected the mud. And let's now control and shift select all the other layers, and we'll go back to channels and just control backspace to fill this with the background color, which happens to be white. Okay, and now we have an alpha channel that's backwards also, or that has this backwards text on it. Okay, so now what we can do is save this out, and what we can do is call this something like car body reversed. Okay, and we'll turn off layers and save this out. Give this just a second to process this. And once this is done, what we can do is go back into Maya and load this up. So let's give this just a second. There we go. Okay, now we can go back to Maya and go back to our Hypershade and take a look at what we've got. We'll go ahead and start with this sidecar layered shader. So let's go ahead and take a look at the input and output connections. And what we're going to have to do is make a duplicate shading network for the opposite side of the car. So what we can do is just make a new layered shader. Okay, and this new layered shader, let's call it something like car decals flipped, or something, just something to where you can tell that this is going to be the opposite side of the car. Okay, and now what we can do is just start to reassemble this shading network. So we can drag in this car paint highlight and drag in the base color. We go ahead and remove all these other layers. Okay, so now we have the base color and the highlight plugged into this new car decals flipped node. Now let's go ahead and bring in the actual flipped texture. Okay, so we'll go ahead and drop in a Lambert. Okay, and we'll assign the a new texture map. Okay, so we'll go ahead and click on this. And let's go to textures. And we want to search for this car. Let's see, where is that? There it is. Guess it took it a second to update. Okay, so there's the flipped. Okay, let me try this again. Doesn't look like it brought in the alpha channel. Let me try this again. Okay, let me try this again real quick. Go up to File, and let's bring in the car body reversed. There we go. And you can see it's now assigned the alpha channel for that. Okay, now what we can do is take this, we'll call this this Lambert 8, the node that's actually got this reversed decal in it. Let's go ahead and just call this something like reverse decals. Can't spell right today. There we go. And we can go ahead and connect this in. And we'll go ahead and bring it up to the front of the layer stack. Okay, now with this car decals flipped, let's go ahead and now assign this to the 3 opposite pieces on this car. Okay, so we can right click, assign material to selection. Okay, and let's go ahead and take a look now at our textures on this opposite side of the car. Okay, and now what we've got is the texture that looks correct. Even though it's backwards in Photoshop, it still comes into Maya looking correct. Now we've got one more issue that we want to address, and that is, if you'll notice, you can see that the texture doesn't quite match up on this back side. So you can see that issue right here, where this doesn't quite match up, and this Vulcan decal is a little bit higher than it was on the opposite side. And if I go up to Window and take a look at the UV texture editor, let me go ahead and just make this a little bit smaller so it's easier for you to see. And I'll move this over to the side. If I select the panel on this back side, you can see here it is in the UV texture editor. Now if I orbit around to the other side and shift select the panel on the opposite side, you can see that they don't quite match up. Okay, and that's what's causing this issue on this back side, and I suspect this is because this is a Boolean surface. So what we can do is right click on this surface and let's go to UV. Okay, and let's start by just selecting a couple of these UV points. Okay, I want to go back and shift select this and make sure that this surface, make sure that both of these surfaces are visible in the UV texture editor. And now what I can do is just right click and go to shell, or I'm sorry, I control right click and go to shell. And what that'll do is select all of the UVs within this surface. And it just makes a quick way of being able to select all of the UVs here. I suppose if you wanted to also, you could just, click and drag over all of the UVs on this side and be able to quickly select them over here. So now what we can do with all of these UVs selected is just switch to our Move tool, and it might help if I make this a little bigger just so it's easier for me to move. With all these UVs selected, I can just grab them and let's pull them up so that they line up as close as possible with this original surface. Okay, so I might need to pull these forward just a little bit. And now you can see that these two surfaces line up pretty well. And now, if I go back to this opposite side and take a render, what we should now see is these two sides line up. Okay, and let me render this real quick. Okay, and now you can see that now that we've moved this back panel a little bit lower in the UV texture editor, now everything lines up pretty well. And we've also got now the Blaupunkt and the Vulkan, even though they are mirrored in Photoshop, they look correct in Maya. So that pretty much concludes the modification kit for the photorealistic car modeling series. So I thank you very much for spending your time with me and look forward to seeing you again. Thank you for supporting Digital Tutors.